I am calling the April 16th, 2024 meeting of the Board of Education to order per Government Code Section 54950 Executor and Education Code Section 35140 Executor at 4:06 p.m. And Trustee Youngblood will be participating via teleconference, and all votes will be taken by roll call. Right now we're having our study session. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the board on the issue of the LCAP?
Not everybody wants.
No? Okay. All right, we'll move right on to our study session then.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me in the back? Yeah? Okay. Perfect. Good afternoon, President Blades, trustees, Superintendent Chernus, members of cabinet, our members of management, and our esteemed members of the public. Thank you for joining us. We thank you for this opportunity to talk to you about our proposed 24-25 Local Control and Accountability Plan. As you're aware, the study session is intended to review the proposed LCAP and obtain feedback on the proposed actions. And the LCAP is focused on actions proposed in the coming year. So we have the annual update and everything in your packet. However, we're going to be focused on the 24-25 year. Before I move on, I wanted to thank our wonderful staff who are all here to share their information with you and answer questions. They've done an amazing job this year and put in a lot of work to put this together for you. So the agenda for this afternoon, I'm going to provide a very, very brief overview of the LCAP because I understand that at least 3 out of the 4 of you have heard me do this a couple of times. And so very brief overview of review of the LCAP, the LCFF funding. We'll talk about the changes in the LCAP template for 24-25 and why it looks different. Very quick budget overview, and then we're going to start reviewing the sections of the LCAP binder, which hopefully you've received and have had a chance to look through. And then we'll get into the 24-25 actions and get your feedback. So starting off with a little bit of background. So California created 8 state priorities that apply to school districts. And the goal behind these was to create a foundation that would allow us to pursue greater pupil achievement. And so as you can see in the slide, they have a foundation of our basic services, our state standards, having course access. That is what all students need in order to obtain their education. The thought is that with that foundation, you add on the engagement with the students, engagement with parents, and creating a school climate that's conducive to learning, that would then propel us into greater student achievement. So that's the whole premise behind the state standards. State priorities. So in order to help districts achieve the state priorities, the state came up with the local control funding formula, which is intended to provide us with that money that we need to have those actions that would allow that to happen. So LCFF, when it was first created, had 3 components. You have base funding, supplemental funding, and concentration funding. I'm going to talk just a little bit about all 3 of those. Base funding, which you see on the slide or on the screen, is a base grant that we get for every single student. The intention behind that base grant is that it would cover everything that is required to provide all students. Then we receive supplemental funding, which is only for students who are English learners, who are socioeconomically disadvantaged, or foster youth. And that is equal to 20% of the base grant is added per student that qualifies under that one of those 3 characteristics. And then we have concentration grant, which you won't see on the screen because we don't receive that. So concentration grant is only given to districts that have over 55% of their student base that meets one of those 3 categories. And we're at about 47, a little over 47% right now. So we don't receive that. We didn't include it on the slide. The last piece that is new, that came new as of 23-24, is the equity multiplier funding. That is received only for specific school sites that are over 70% socioeconomically disadvantaged and who have a non-stability rate of greater than 25%. And non-stability means that their enrollments, kids are enrolling and disenrolling more than that percentage every year. So based on that, we only have 1 site that qualifies, and that's El Camino Real. So that's the only one that receives that funding, and you'll see a goal specifically for that funding as we get into our LCAP. So, to wrap up the background, so the basic requirements of an LCAP are that we have to address all 8 state priorities for all students, for our English learners, for our socioeconomically disadvantaged, and for our foster youth students. There's been another group added, which is the long-term English learners. We have to make sure that we have an action for them. That's new for this year, for 24-25. And we need to make sure that we are addressing all of the student groups, as I mentioned. Anybody identified for differentiated assistance, which we don't have anybody in differentiated assistance, which is great news for this year. However, we also have to address any areas of the California School Dashboard where we have a red for a group at a school site. And we'll talk about that. We have actions for that in the LCAP as well. But we also have to make sure that we have the goals, actions, and expenditures that would support our overall direction of the plan towards student achievement. Okay. The additional requirements. So this is at the core of LCFF, is that we receive additional money for students who meet certain characteristics, and that money should be used to increase or improve services for those students. So you'll hear the term unduplicated pupils. That is any of those 3 student groups that I mentioned before: English learner, foster youth, socioeconomically disadvantaged. The way that we prove that we are increasing or improving services is by spending at least the amount of supplemental money we receive on actions that are principally directed towards those students and are effective in meeting meeting the needs of those students. So that's the additional requirement that we have to hit. Now, what you'll see in the 24-25 LCAP is that the template's changed, where now they have focused it more on making sure that we are putting actions in the plan tied to a metric so that we can measure it. They want everything to be measurable so that we can make changes if we have to. If we don't see movement in certain areas, we need to be able to change actions. So the 24-25 plan is really more targeted towards the areas that we have to hit, that we're required to make sure that we're addressing. So those are each of our student groups. Those are the areas where we have red, the lowest performance indicator on the California dashboard. So we're focusing effort there to make sure that we're deliberately saying what we're doing for those students, how we're going to measure it, and then we can adjust as needs be. So the intent is to have a living plan. It's to make sure it's understandable. It's so that our readers can read and they know what an action is and what it says and what we're doing. And then we want it to be accountable. So we want to make sure that everything's tied to an outcome that we are watching and that we are reevaluating at every step. So I'm going to go real quick through the budget overview. If you've been to any of the LCAP presentations, these are the same slides, just with the numbers updated to reflect the budget overview for parents that you have in your binder. And so we've got all the budget estimate, the revenues listed on top, which total $396,936,322, and our total general fund expenditures of $415,493,061. One thing to note about the discrepancy between the two numbers is we are still spending a lot of one-time money that we've been carrying over year to year. So that's one of the reasons that you'll see that difference there. When we talk about where our revenue comes from, the vast majority comes from LCFF, as you can see here. It's about 72%. Comes from LCFF funding. That's the base and the concentration grant, and the supplemental amount. When we look at LCFF itself, and these percentages are important. So of the LCFF total, 8.4% of that is supplemental money. That 8.4% becomes important because in our LCAP, we have to make sure that we are spending enough money to equate to 8.4% of increased or improved services in order to satisfy that requirement to have our LCAP approved by the county. And so that's important to remember as we go through. So in your packet, you have the annual update. The section in the annual update, which is lengthy if you go through it, it presents a 3-year picture of where we thought we were going to be. So we had a metric, we said where our goal was, and we have the data for each of those years. And then we use that to determine the effectiveness of those actions. So in that goal analysis for each goal, you'll have an explanation of how the planned actions were implemented, as well as if there were any differences between, like, let's say we started down one route, we couldn't hire the right amount of staff, so we had to shift gears. That's happening a lot at school districts these days. You'll see those differences. You'll see material differences between what we budgeted and what we're projecting to spend, and then an explanation for that. We'll also have an explanation as to whether things were effective or not over that 3-year span, and then why or what changes are going to be made to those goals moving forward into the next LCAP. All of that is really a requirement of the new LCAT template. We're not allowed to roll anything into a new LCAP unless we can prove that it was effective, or we have something to say this action was definitely effective. We're going to move it into the new LCAP. So that's part of the reason that we see a huge shift in the LCAP, is that we needed to make sure that everything that we have listed in there was either changed, right? We couldn't just copy and paste it over from the last LCAP. So we're not going to dig too much into the annual update, but we can talk about that. So one of the big lessons we learned while we were going through this whole process is that it's essential that we revisit all of our goals and actions every single year, and we need to look at the outcomes, right? And what we've noticed is that maybe that things have been kind of carried over year to year. That's why you see a complete departure for 24-25. So, as mentioned before, the 24-25 LCAP, which you also have in your binder, is a new template. This is the beginning of a new 3-year plan. So 23-24 closed out our last plan. 24-25 really is supposed to set us up for what we're going to do for the next 3 years. Similar to prior years, you have an LCAP summary that's included in there that has descriptions of our school district, the different sites we have, what grades we serve, our student population, demographics, covers TK through 12. A reflection on our annual performance, so based on the California Schools dashboard, as well as our local indicators or our local performance benchmarks. We have a discussion about that in there. I'm going to call it the glows and grows, meaning there's areas where we are highlighting, hey, we did really well in these areas, and there's areas where we say we need extra work on it. And so all of that's in the plan summary. The next section in your in the binder is the engagement section. And this, I think, is critical. Is the most important, one of the most important parts of the plan, because we very much appreciate the engagement of our parents, our students, our teachers, our staff, and other community members. And this input is critical in our planning, our implementation, our evaluation, and the future adjustments to this plan ultimately. The district reached out to all of our existing advisory groups, as well as held 2 district-wide community forums, both virtual and in person. Our goal was to ensure that all voices were heard and reflected in the LCAP development process. The groups shown on screen, on this and the next screen, were all actively involved in LCAP development process. So we first met with our principals, we met with our friends at Apple, and we met with CSEA. We had our virtual community forum, met with the high school parent advisory, the student advisory committee, the teacher advisory committee, the elementary parent advisory committee. We met with the PTA. We met with our TK through 12 principals again. And then we had a meeting with the special ed parent advisory, the DLAC group. We had another community town hall, this one in person. And we met with the middle school parent advisory group. And then today we're having a discussion with the board. So I'll be with you in a second. So separate meetings were organized for each advisory group, again, both in person and virtual. And through these 14 input sessions, accessibility and inclusivity was ensured. Student representation was also included and very much appreciated, with a diverse group of students from each school in the district selected to serve on the student advisory committee. We made deliberate efforts to ensure that we had representation of foster youth students, English learners, socioeconomically disadvantaged students, as well as students with disabilities in these groups. So now I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Young, who will take us through the LCAP goals.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. So at this time, we would like to review the 9 LCAP goals and any newly proposed actions with you this afternoon, and we will be soliciting your feedback, questions, and input goal by goal. So our first goal that we have tonight is surrounding the innovation and the approaches to student learning in this district. You'll see that the first two goals before you on the screen are goals that pertain to all students in order for them to be successful and meet or exceed grade level expectations. We plan to accomplish these two goals through a series of specific actions, which include providing comprehensive math, reading, writing, and targeted intervention programs to support student achievement, a K-12 computer science continuum for students to increase their college and career readiness. Two new programs targeting our students with special needs were launched this year to provide more opportunities to earn a high school diploma as well as employment in the district. An expansion of our preschool programs with 3 additional sites opening next year through the inclusion model, and 2 to 3 additional sites slated for the year thereafter. Also, increased continuity in the special education program continuums at the sites, as well as equitable distribution of special education resources. Efforts to increase community engagement, particularly with our underserved communities, will be underway next year. The elimination of the 5th and 6th grade combination classes, which began this year, will carry forward. And through a cycle of continuous improvement, our district will continue to offer innovative new programs and pathways in order to increase our enrollment and continue to serve the community. So at this time, we'd like to invite any questions or feedback that you may have on our first two goals, which pertain to all students. And thank you to Chad Holo, our Assessment and Accountability TOSA, who will be capturing your notes on the screen.
So surprise, surprise, the middle school athletics program at the rest. Huh?
You want it removed?
No, stop it. I was like totally shocked. You got me off guard. When we were at the wrestling tournament on Friday, a lot of the talk was and I wouldn't say this, I promised Sarah Barton I wouldn't, go too far, but a lot of the principals, not the principals, but yeah, the principals and the staff think that the addition of girls flag football is a needed thing for middle school sports for next year. And so that is my only input for that program.
Yes, I would agree. When I heard that, I thought that is an amazing idea. We're talking about sports for next year already. We've heard about soccer, and definitely girls flag football would be a perfect middle school sport to feed into our high school.
Okay, since we're talking sports, let's continue. I really like how we had the small, dual wrestling matches. Are we going to be able to expand that into the other sports that we're currently doing with middle school, like volleyball and basketball? Is that in the plans as well?
Yeah, we actually did do that. So we had basketball, and all the schools played each other. The cross country was all the schools. The track meet will be all the schools. So it's the same model for all.
Okay.
Do you remember when Beth Fisher was presenting and she said they were the champions, the volleyball champions?
Yeah.
So that was what she meant by that. They beat all the middle schools.
Do we have, sorry. Girls and boys volleyball, yes?
Correct.
Yes,
Yeah.
all sports were offered for both genders. And then we did have scrimmages leading up to all of the culminating competitions between the schools.
Okay, and then my next question is kind of about the matrix up at the top. We don't have any mid-year matrix. It's all based on the dashboard. And so my concern is that the dashboard will come out with this year's data, and then next year we'll be making goals basically on year-old data. Is that correct?
That is correct. We receive all of our accountability data. Unfortunately, they're lagging indicators.
So in previous LCAPs, we've had kind of some mid-year things that we've used to measure to make sure that we're making appropriate goals that are not based on, year-old data. Is there some way that we can, and I noticed this pretty much on every goal level, that we don't have any matrix kind of during the year. And before we kind of had something set up, but there's nothing in here to
Sure.
kind of judge us, see how, how we did.
Yeah,
What
sure.
our progress is and where our needs really are met.
Sure. We can absolutely add in some local measures throughout the year so that we could see how we're doing along the way.
Okay, and that would be for all the goals?
Yes. The long-term English learners, we do have a measure that's different than the dashboard because there's nothing available yet on the dashboard. We did
Right.
choose to use the dashboard because that is what we have to respond to for the LCAP, but we can absolutely add in other measures.
Okay. I'd like to see that. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
And then it says here on goal 1.2, we're doing fundamental math programs. Are we expanding the math fracts? Are we adding the geometry lessons as my lovely student wanted so desperately?
We are continuing with Reflex and Frax Math, and we are also continuing with Math IXL, which is going to be expanding out this coming year beyond just the few pilot schools. Now,
What was that program again? Sorry.
Sure. IXL, the three letters. And so that was piloted this year in our math intervention classrooms at 3 of our sites. And so we will be providing at all 6 sites, as well as in Algebra 1A next year, just to provide some targeted intervention to students. Now, as far as Reflex Math having geometry, that is not my understanding because it serves only up to 6th grade and it covers up to algebra. So I did research that after you shared that at the board meeting, but I did not see geometry as an add-on. Dr. Lone, I don't know if you have anything to add on if you believe geometry is available through Reflex.
Hi, it's not available through
Okay.
Reflex, and so, but the other foundational aspects of math that we are targeting have to do with cognitively guided instruction as well, and so that helps to support the foundational math understanding as well, and that aligns to the way students are tested in CASP.
Could you expand on those other programs?
Yes, so it's, so we're doing CGI, that cognitively guided instruction. And what we have 2 cohorts currently. And so we have a cohort number 1, which are experienced teachers from last year. And so we're going to be we've been working with UCLA this year. Next year, we're going to continue that work with UC Irvine. And what we're doing with them is we have them having lab days. And so our experienced CGI teachers will be involved in like coaching where they do labs in where they go to another school and watch each other teach while they're getting coaching from staff, from UCI staff. And so that's one layer. And then we also have another layer of like our new to CGI teachers that we're going to be having those offerings for them where they get to know more of the foundational aspects of CGI so that we are addressing the foundational math as well as the conceptual understanding. So we bring it together in order to have a comprehensive math approach. So it's the fact fluency combined with conceptual math understanding. And so we have those trainings. We have optional trainings in the summer as a part of Summer Institute, and then we're going to continue that work into next school year as well for both cohorts. So you self-designate if you feel that you're an experienced person with CGI, or if you feel that you're a beginner, then we have that differentiated professional development.
Okay, thank you. And then, okay, then I also wanted to ask about the comprehensive writing program at each level. Can you give me more detail on that?
Sure, absolutely. And so our district has historically used Step Up to Writing, which provides great structure for students in the writing process. However, we felt a need to round that out, and so we will be adding Writer's Workshop next year in grades K through 8. And so this will help to provide voice and choice and agency for students and really build off of thematic writing and structure mini lessons throughout the year so that teachers can guide students through the writing process. And so that is our major focus at elementary and middle school. And at the high school, we're going to be providing training on guided language acquisition and design, which is GLAD. And you'll see that throughout the LCAP as a huge focus to support our English learners.
Yeah, I noticed that in several of the goals. Could GLAD or these other sources and be used as metrics in the LCAP?
That would be interesting to try and capture or quantify because
I'm
it
just
could
not
be
sure.
numbers of people trained. Certainly, we can do that. But as far as use in the classroom, strategies or lessons, I'm trying to think how we would have teachers report that in a way that's not too laborious.
Okay.
But we can definitely continue to think of ways to add additional metrics.
Okay, thanks.
Of course.
And then I have a question about computer science. And I am excited that we're adding computer science throughout all of our grades. But I just want to make sure that we, especially in our K through third grades, that we're really focusing on reading and math, and that we're focusing on the foundations, and more of this is a supplemental or a a side, not factored into every lesson, or a big chunk of everybody's school day.
You mean like the Orange County School of Computer Science type of model? Is that what you're referring to not
no,
doing?
well, no, they're
in that
talking
level?
about making this a continuum
Mhm.
through the whole thing. And so if I understand it correctly, that we'll be teaching computer science in all of our schools from kindergarten through 12.
Yeah, like how integrated is it with the lesson? Yeah.
But that we're really making sure that we're focused, especially in those lower grade levels, on foundational reading and math. So that was my only.
Like, is it going to take away from that? Is what you're asking?
Yeah.
I don't want to take away instructional hours on reading and math, especially at those lower levels.
Definitely not.
I have a couple questions.
I'll let you go.
Not really sure if this. Okay. Actually, it kind of ties on to the reading, and I'm not quite sure if it belongs here because this isn't a reading section, but I just want to throw it out, and maybe it'll fit in at a later goal. I went to a classroom and saw this and was talking about it. So the science of reading is popular and seems to be something that's very specific and helpful for reading, especially on the TK to 3. Can you maybe talk a little bit about what the science of reading is, and is that something that we could that would be beneficial for us to look at?
Yeah. Absolutely. I actually did see, I'm not sure if you saw the update this week, that it was struck down, the Science of Reading bill that was making its way through. Okay. Yes. Yes. And so the science of reading is a conversation that has been occurring in the legislature regarding the best approach to reading instruction and whether it should be isolated more into phonics, more of a traditional approach, versus something that is what they consider cueing and more comprehensive approach to reading. There's a lot of
Like a picture, and you say the word, and so
Exactly.
it's connecting those two things.
exactly, and
Okay.
so meaning
Using
making meaning
the
with
brain and
reading.
the science behind
Exactly,
that.
and images and gestures and visuals. And so what the bill being struck down, we do recognize, though, we need to continue to assess our reading instruction approaches, and that we have had a historically balanced approach to reading instruction, and we hope to continue to do that with explicit phonics instruction, phonemic awareness, and building understanding and meaning in our students, and that through GLAD, we hope that that will still bring in a lot of the other side of the cueing and the visuals and the gestures that are needed to help students make meaning to the words too. And so we plan to continue to have a balanced approach, and with the use of GLAD and the continued conversations at the elementary level with our principals, we're going to keep that as a focus, especially with the screening for reading difficulties legislature coming through.
That's actually where I was in a class, a TK class. So it wasn't at the high school level. It was really that initial piece, as you were kind of alluding to. And they were talking about decodables that were in there. And I understand we wouldn't want to just focus on one thing, but and the balance of it. And I learned about this science of reading even before I saw or heard what had happened in the legislature. I was not aware at all of that. But I'm just curious as if that's something that using some of that strategy would be beneficial, especially on the early level. And is that something that we would include in an LCAP, even to research a little, even if it's not specific to science of reading, but
Yeah.
what that means?
Right.
And then second, related to it is Orton Gillingham. When you talk about reading screenings and dyslexia and all of that as well, where would that fit in?
Sure.
Or would it?
We do have that also. We have that slated for this summer, and we'll be training our academic support teachers this summer on Sonday, which is the Orton Gillingham model. And so that will provide intensive reading instruction and intervention across all of our elementary schools. And so we're being very proactive to be able to address the bill and really screening our students for reading difficulties and providing the intervention that we'll need to. So we are happy to say we have it built in and it's already scheduled for the summer.
So were you asking, Carrie, that we should put in the science of reading regardless? Because I don't really care what the bill said. I mean, if they didn't pass throughout the state, but
I
like
just-
we could do it separately.
Yeah, I mean, whatever is
Mhm.
benefiting the kids, if there's something in science of reading that is that could help, then
Mhm.
we should investigate it a little bit.
I think too, if we did it and it was successful, maybe we can be a model as to why maybe we can.
How to layer it,
I don't-
or
yeah.
Sounds like an innovative program to me.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, we are certainly embedding already all the components that are necessary for the phonics instructions, and so we can call it out more explicitly. We would like to just kind of defer from having the buzzwords of science or reading, but we will
Exactly.
absolutely be sure to more
Okay.
explicitly call out that the phonics instruction is being taught in our schools.
Dr. Young,
Yes, Mr. Youngblood.
I had a quick question regarding the transition to work program. Would you explain the Placentia Linda Upward Success model?
Sure, I would love to. However, I would hate to steal any of the amazing spotlight from Renee Gray, so I'm going to hand it over to her to share about that program.
Okay, I'm excited, Mr. Youngblood, to talk to you about the PLUS program. If you recall, a few months ago, we had Anayeli Jimenez, our first PLUS program hiree for PYL. And what we have done is our students who are in the venture program, and even students who maybe start in the venture program but are very, very close to graduating, we have set them up with work opportunities in our district in order to, let's say, help either as a special education aide or maybe in the print shop or perhaps in the nutrition department. And we train them, we work on job skills, and then what happens is we hope that we can employ them in our district. So
Yeah, and I will say that we've modeled this after our program that we established in Palos Verdes, to where we now in Palos Verdes have had several employees hired. And so it's a great program. There's so many benefits, not just to the employees we hire, but to all students that can see the benefits and the differences in people and have those mentors be some of our venture graduates is pretty special. So it's worked. I established it in PV, and it's something that I'm very proud of. And everything I hear is we have not just Anayeli, but we have some others. One with the print shop, I believe. One at food services. So we have a few more employees on the way and some kind of in the pipeline. So it's exciting.
yeah. And we can even get you a shirt, Mr. Youngblood. We have a PLUS
I
logo
appreciate
shirt.
that. I love that. Hey, so it's separate than the CTE program, the pathway program we have for that.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I have a question along with the lines of that program as well. The budget is $25,000, and that seems incredibly low for something like this. What does that entail? And if we increased it, how would that benefit?
It is a little bit low. What we're hoping is looking at instructional assistants that we have already to have them be trained on being job coaches, but we're also pairing with Department of Rehab as well as Goodwill Industries. And so some of what's in the works, but not yet, is seeing if we can have some sort of partnership with them where they come in and job coach. So we thought a lot of it was going to be a partnership, and so we didn't have to add as many dollars to it, but I can see where that could possibly be an addition.
Yeah, I think 100,000 would be more appropriate.
Okay.
Just because, I mean, the employees, it depends how many we're going to have, right? What I did find in PV was these employees aren't working 40-hour weeks. So sometimes
Right.
it's 10 hours a week.
Right.
And typically Department of Rehab is offering the coaches, so you're not paying for a coach either. So we were always under about 100,000 a year, even with, I think, maybe three or four employees. But 25 does seem low.
Maybe we should add that as a goal to reach out to our community partners and investigate that and pull that in. so that we know that, yeah, this is low, but we are working
Yeah.
towards things. And then I
Oh,
just
can I real quick
Okay.
along?
We need to
breed
Labradors and
Yeah, okay.
sell eggs for
That's right.
chickens now.
My question along with that same program, is there any connection with job opportunities outside the district, as opposed to just inside the district?
Yeah, that has been the core venture program. Is we have a teacher that actually gets our graduates hired and does work programs in local business.
Yeah.
What we didn't have here
Was the internal.
the internal.
Right. Okay.
Okay, I'd like to talk about 1.12, innovative programs. So I just was wondering, what new pathways are we looking at? Are we just supporting the current ones? And then last year on the LCAP, we had looking into Performing Arts Academy, and I was wondering where we stood on that.
Absolutely. So the pathways that are currently slated in that line item and programs include, of course, Orange County School for Computer Science, the Universal Sports Institute at Parkview, and we have a few elementaries who have reached out about exploration of STEM magnet programs. We don't want to announce their names at this time because it really is just exploration. We also have a few principals who have reached out about exploration of dual language Spanish being offered at their campuses as well. And so this is really to help us support our schools and principals as they continue to find ways to innovate their schools and meet their community needs.
About the performing arts?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. And about the performing arts pathway, that was something that we did not spend much of our efforts looking into this year. However, in this coming year, we already have it slated. In fact, Dr. Gray and I met on that as well this week and evaluated which, following the WASC visitation, and determined, of course, that it would fall under the arts, media, and education sector of the CTE pathways. And so it is something that we're going to begin exploring with our high schools next year, what that might look like as part of our full career education master plan that we hope to bring forward.
But we're also looking at STEAM programs at our elementary school, which would have the arts.
Yeah, this seems like that lines up with the media pathway as well.
Mhm.
So
Yes, so we have a few schools that have that, and so that's something we're looking at.
My recommendation, because I like these ideas, would be that we have study sessions or discuss this way early in advance before it actually gets to a vote. But bring us along the way. Talk to the community. Let's get some additional input, surveys and stuff, because I want to know what people want. I hear little smatterings of things out there, but it would be really good to have a nice comprehensive survey from the community on like pie in the sky idea,
Right.
and then what really could that look like?
Definitely, thank you.
Yeah, and then also building on what Ms. Buck said, is do we capture why students leave our district? You know? And we have a lot of students that I know of that go to Orange County Performing Arts School. And so capturing those, and so we actually know, what programs that we have that are not, that students are leaving for to get to, that we are not providing in our district.
Even like there's auto programs in other districts, but they can take those through ROP, and even if I know those are huge, expensive classes to
Right,
bring,
right.
just all the facilities for that. But maybe there's a strategy there, and partnering with ROP because they have some ability to do that with us, and we could lead, a new program that hasn't been established in ROP yet. Even.
Yes. Yeah, that would be great. So we do, when students unenroll, they do have to provide the next school that they're enrolling at, and typically families also provide a reason for leaving, so we would be able to track some of that information as well.
And we do have data on students that have left, for example, for CRLA charter in Orange, which hopefully we actually have been getting some of those kids back with our computer science charter. We also have data on kids that have left for the sports school at Rancho. And so both of our new programs, we have data to show that we have lost kids. And so the intention is our new programs will help attract them back, and we have preliminary data to show that they are.
I also think too, if I think the performing arts is a good program, and so I think what we should just say is let's have a goal to open in 25, 26. Let's just do it, and then
Well, I think we
Let's
really
go.
should, let's investigate it. Let's get our feedback from our community. There are our partners and we are serving their kids. Because maybe there's something there that I'm unaware of. I mean,
Or collateral
Or-
issues. For example, it seems like it would be a perfect fit at El Dorado because of everything, but they are the high school that's increasing enrollment. The education pathway is moving over to that school in the next couple of years.
Right.
We already have not enough bathrooms, not enough band.
Not enough facilities at all.
So
Yes.
there's so much to consider to put into that. I would hope that that would be the right place for it. But maybe there's something else we could consider.
Parkview might be a good spot too. I mean, just
because you could use out anybody's theater,
Yeah.
or Esperanza's has that new theater as well.
Valencia's theater.
Well, we could use them all, definitely. But where would we build a program where it's partnering language arts and math into those programs as well?
Yes. That was definitely part of our conversation this afternoon about looking at the comprehensive programs that we offer at all the sites. Are we too program rich by adding another one? Facilities, enrollment.
Or do we need to start more in middle school and build up those programs a little bit more so it's more robust when we get there?
Absolutely. All noted.
I'm glad that we're starting to look more at these specialized schools because that's what we're losing these kids to.
I could be wrong. I thought I remember that there was a spot for like a pie in the sky suggestion, almost like an online suggestion box. Do we have that online that people can just pop in and drop? Where is that? And because we don't advertise it.
I don't know that we have a dedicated pie in the sky, drop in your ideas year round, but for the LCAP feedback form, there was within every goal, wide open, make your suggestions.
Can we have one that's just always
Year-round?
available?
Olivia's going to give out her phone number for that.
Yeah, we can look at that.
Just so that people can give feedback. They can email us, but if they say, I've got an idea that I'd like you to look into,
Okay.
it creates a queue for us and maybe directives there.
If I could tie it right back to 1.10, engage community, building in some more surveys and that sort of pipeline would be, I think, where that could go.
All right, we should probably move on to goal 2. 'cause I
Okay.
think- Right?
Oh.
We have how many goals?
Yes,
8?
this is 1 and 2 combined.
9.
So if you,
Okay, good.
goal 2 is really our base services. And so if there's nothing more for all students, then we're going to start to head into our supplemental funds. And so our goals that are targeting our unduplicated pupils. And so we will begin with,
okay, I had a question on number 2.
oh, sure.
On 2.3, it says instructional materials, supplies, and services. Is that $239,000 for all the schools?
That is the non-supplemental money that we will be utilizing for
Okay,
schools.
I was looking at, because it just seemed so low to me. And so I pulled out this year's budget. And this year, just on our base, for all the schools, we have 1.9 million.
Yes, so our directors are continuing to form their budgets for next year and utilizing the Title II funds, our learning recovery funds, arts, music, instructional materials, block grant. So this is still in process as we're finalizing our budgets for next year. But that number will definitely grow
'Cause I was
come
like,
June.
So we're looking at 1
1
million to
almost
200,000?
2 million here for last year to
To
200.
200? Is that,
Yeah.
are we missing something?
Yeah,
We are
this
not.
is right here.
If it's non-supplemental,
And it's
is there some, what else is?
That's our base.
It's
And then
whether or not we're doing an
supplemental is
adoption
actually
too,
600.
so I don't know if we have one planned for
What?
24-20. Usually when we have a textbook adoption, that's when you see a giant expense there. And so if we purchased a massive amount of textbooks in 23-24, we may not be doing an adoption next year, which is why the expense would be lower.
Okay, could you get us more information on that?
Yes.
Because I was like dividing it, that number by all of our sites, it just seems really low.
Yes, that number has already grown, I can say with certainty. And so this was the first draft that our team was working on. So the number has grown exponentially.
Okay.
Remind me when we'll get the final draft. What-
June is when you will
Okay.
be
So
voting on
those
it,
numbers
but
will be adjusted by then.
yes,
Okay.
as well as any revisions made based off of today's study session.
Okay, and then since we're talking about you sending us updates, when you give us our updates, can you make sure that they're marked on the bottom of like edited by date? So it doesn't get confusing which one you're looking at? Most recent, yeah, like revision with the date, so we know, because
Yes.
there's been a lot of updates that you've been giving us along the way, and then this afternoon, I was trying to compare, I'm like, oh, this is so hard to even, like, is this the latest, or is this the latest? And I finally just said, I'm just putting that stuff away, and just focusing on the binder. So that would be really helpful.
Sure.
Thanks.
version 1,
Version 2.
I have nothing for 2.
And leading up to the June session, we will have a version though that will be bolded and struck through so that you could see clearly what
Oh,
has been
excellent.
revised and changed, because I know that has been a source of
Thank you, thank you.
frustration in the past.
Yeah, because you're doing
Yes.
compare and contrasting gets more confusing.
Okay, I'm going to dive into goal 3 then. Our third goal surrounds the academic achievement of our English learners. This student group represents 14.2% of our district, or 3,276 students. As you can see on the screen, there are achievement gaps that we are trying to address through our targeted actions, namely in English language arts, mathematics, graduation rates, and chronic absenteeism. Switching to the next slide. Okay, we plan to address these areas of growth through a series of actions which include providing professional development for all teachers on ELD standards, the ELD framework, and ELD strategies as part of our 3-year EL master plan. We're going to be implementing training for special education staff on appropriate assessments for English learners, how to write linguistically appropriate goals in IEPs, and provide cross-disciplinary training to strengthen their multidisciplinary assessment reports. We'll be facilitating LPAC testing through a site-based administration of the exam on a voluntary basis. So this will be at our Title I sites, namely, where we have a large number of English learners, as well as providing explicit training and professional development on what the LPAC exam consists of, so that our teachers can better support our students in reclassifying. We're going to increase our parent engagement by hosting family workshops and professional development at our Title I sites. And we speak a lot throughout about our community engagement efforts that will be increasing next year, and so I'll leave some for future goals. We're going to provide an ELD summer camp for our elementary English learner students that provides enrichment and is focused on language acquisition and GLAD strategies, and we are so pleased to say that we have too many teachers interested in teaching the ELD summer camp than we need. And then we are going to be investing a lot of our funds in OCDE's GLAD training to really help assist both integrated and designated ELD. And so this will be our first really comprehensive ELD strategies approach in quite some time in this district. And so it's going to be happening in our preschools and our TKs, as well as K through 12. So at this time, we'd like to invite any feedback or questions, suggestions you may have on Goal 3 pertaining to our English learners, and then we'll have a separate one for our long-term English learners next.
2 questions. One has to do with staffing personnel related to EL. We used to have a director or administrator of English language. Can you tell me a little bit about what that structure looks like?
Sure.
And then second question is, what are the number of special ed students and English language students together? What is that intersection?
Sure. Do you want to pull up that while I okay. So I'd like to reintroduce you to Mr. Jose Cabrera. He's our Assistant Director of Federal Programs.
So it fits right in there.
Yes, so he is supporting our Title I, Title II, Title III, and Title IV. And so that is, of course, Title I, and then our English learners primarily.
Do we have somebody under you that's specifically for EL?
Yes, we have a teacher on special assignment, and so Blanca Gibbons supports him as well. And then we also have Kim Schultz this year, who's also on the secondary side, who's supporting him for ELs, but we also have a Title I TOSA, Stephanie Valdez Schrader, and she also is doing a lot of crossover work with Title III since the two are so intertwined, and so she is supporting ELs
So really 3 support staff under the
under him,
related
and
to
then
EL.
clerical as
Okay,
well.
Great.
Mhm. Okay.
And then
And then our duly identified students.
Okay, and the number of our dually identified students who are identified with an IEP as well as EL is 677.
so that begs the question of the 3.4 special ed training. There's only $7,500 there. What is that going to go to benefit all of those students?
A lot of that would be sub costs when we train teachers, but we have a lot of skilled folks here that can do the training, so we figured we didn't need to pay for outside training. If we did, we could use it, and if the suggestion is that to increase it a little bit, we could as well, but we're hoping that we can do in-house training for it.
And would that be just special education teachers, or would that be aides, or what would?
It
That-
would be special education teachers, and then we would add training on for our instructional aides so that they could support the work of the special education instructors.
Okay. Maybe we consider what that looks like out of $7,500. Just curious. Looks like it maybe an increase would be
Mhm.
valuable.
Okay, I believe it's 3.2. Staffing, what is the goal for the English language learners for these extra classes? Do we have like are we trying to do 20 to 1?
Sure. And so is this 3.2 you mentioned?
Mhm.
So this is referring to our secondary schools, and this is the designated ELD courses, and they
Correct.
generally are running 20 to 1. Some smaller than that as well. It depends on the levels of students. So different sections may be comboed up so that it can be efficient staffing, but I would say 20 to 25 max is what you will see in those secondary ELD courses.
Thank you. And then the EL assessments for special education, I thought that was a great goal.
Yeah.
And can you give me more detail how this is going to work so that we make sure that we evaluate these students correctly?
Yes, and I could give you a lot of detail, but I think the better person to give you that detail would be the person who oversees our psychologist, and that's our assistant director, Jamie Schill.
So this year, we actually had a trainer come out, from Zurich, who did the training with all of our school psychologists on how to assess students who are English language learners. So we started that work already this year. We've also increased different tests that we have to make sure that we're using that are linguistically appropriate. So we're also extending that.
Do you feel like your $7,000 budget is enough? Because that doesn't sound like it's going to pay for more professional development.
It's putting her on the spot.
I know. I'm sorry.
He knows everything's
We're trying to give you a little more.
I'm sorry.
But not put you on
So
the spot.
sad to that is we really do have a lot of experts within, and we have her as a consultant. We all get trained by her as well, and then we train too. So
So we're
um,
just
train the
training
trainer.
the trainer.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
the trainer. Okay,
Yeah.
so then that's good.
yeah, we're trying all the time to.
I know.
Yeah.
I would just like to give you more money.
County SELPA actually offers, as part of the SELPA, they have a list of resources in their online training that we access regularly.
For free.
With amazing people like Dr. Ortiz, who is well known for the English languages that's included identified. So you can actually go on and watch all of the training and all of the resources are available through Imperial SELPA. So that's also another tool. And the county also created a manual that we first started using.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I have a follow-up question, just kind of triggered my thought process. We have a lot of students that are now in class. We've done a lot of immersion or
Inclusion.
yes, inclusion. Slipped my mind.
Uh-huh.
Is there a value, or are there teachers that have a higher number of special education students in their class that might benefit from this as well? Is there any way to look at that metric and add them in as a training?
Yeah, and I think, to be honest, I think it's good for all. So we could be more granular and see who has maybe up above this threshold and maybe give them a little bit more, but we're really working collaboratively with Ed Services on the training for all of our educators.
even as an option,
Mhm.
that they could,
Mhm.
kind of a cafeteria menu of it.
Yeah, yep.
Thank you.
Okay, goal 3.112. Are our community liaisons, are they going to be full-time or are they considered part-time?
I believe they're part-time, isn't
I-
it? I believe that they're all
I-
part-time. So we
I
have
believe-
5 bilingual community liaisons currently, and they are part-time. I see Jose nodding at me.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
And what are the 5 schools?
I knew it was coming.
You knew it
They
was
are
coming.
at Melrose, Glenview, Valadez, Kramer, and Bernardo Yorba due to the dual program.
Oh, it's going to be Valdez. And who else? Bernard.
Kramer and Bernardo.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. Okay, I'm going to move along to goal 4, which is in the same. Oh, wait.
Let me look at my notes, make sure I got everything.
Would Rio Vista and Topaz benefit from also a bilingual community liaison?
This is
So
something
maybe
that,
we want to consider that as well because we're targeting all Yales. That's a high, Title I school.
yes,
Yeah,
this is
and
something that
Ruby.
well,
And
this is
Ruby.
absolutely something that we've talked about. So some don't prefer the bilingual community liaison because they have bilingual clerks or bilingual secretaries, and so they feel as though they are able to accomplish
Both.
those needs through those staffing. And so we are supplementing Ruby this coming year though because they don't have continuous support.
Okay, so Ruby would be added to this list because this
Not
is
as a
next year.
bilingual community liaison, but
Oh,
we're
okay.
going to be providing additional hours to their bilingual clerk so that they have full-time Spanish-speaking coverage available in their front office.
Because a lot of these community liaisons, they go out to the
Yes.
community,
Mhm.
and if they're structured in an office, they
Mhm.
don't really have that flexibility to
Mhm.
go and serve the
Mhm.
needs and help.
Yes.
So that would be
Yes.
Maybe because those numbers are so, when you look at attendance, the numbers are so low, maybe
Mhm,
that
mhm.
just going out and strategizing that way would
Mhm.
pay for itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that
and help with the chronic absenteeism.
they utilize them in that way often, yes. I believe many use Title I funds, though, to pay for their bilingual community liaisons, and so that has to be the principal and the school's choice if they want to invest their money in that way. But we can definitely encourage them and look at, as a district, how we could support them in that.
Okay. We're on goal 4?
Mm-hmm.
All right, we
Well,
have 30
I
minutes.
got 2 more questions.
Okay.
Quick.
So we have
Okay.
30 minutes for how many more goals?
We have 9 total.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Then I'll just ask the one. GLAD is in here all through this, and we haven't discussed what GLAD is yet or how it's going to be utilized. So I think this would be a good time to talk about that.
Yeah, perfect. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Jose Cabrera.
So glad you asked about GLAD. I think that this is one of the ways we innovate for English learners. What we're proposing is the training is really an intensive seminar. So our teachers will go through a 2-day seminar on research and language acquisition and understanding what language acquisition is and how it's different from the English language arts framework. So they'll go through a 2-day research and theory seminar. And then there's a practicum, if you will, of 4 days where they'll visit other school sites to see it in action and see what that looks like in action. Kind of similar to what Dr. Leon said about the CGI, kind of that practice. And then the consultants will also come into our classrooms to demo and work with our teachers. And so GLAD is really about language acquisition through an acceleration, not a remediation. It's not an intervention. It's really to accelerate language acquisition, and language acquisition in terms of English language, the English language. And so it's a lot of strategies, a lot of visuals, thinking maps, structures, posters, a lot of interaction, a lot of speaking. So it's very interactive, engaging for students as well as teachers.
So it's really professional development.
It is professional development. It's not a program. We're not buying something in a box. We're actually buying professional development, and it's a consistent, systematic way to provide language acquisition across all grade spans.
Topaz was a pioneer of that in our district, and they had amazing success in their CASP scores this past year, as well as in their reclassification results. And so we were really pleased with the results they had. And so, in speaking more with the principal, we're going to expand out to.
Yes, and Topaz was just, they dipped their, foot into GLAD, and we saw results. And so this is going to provide a systematic way across the district as far as implementation, as well as success criteria, metrics to measure what that looks like. It's not a test. We're not going to develop tests for students, but how are students progressing through the language continuum? And so that's really what GLAD is about. GLAD's been around for about 35 years, and Orange County holds the training center for the National Training Center. So we are in a great spot as far as Orange County leading the way for GLAD.
Thanks. Thanks for sharing.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to proceed to goal number 4. And this goal surrounds the academic achievement of our long-term English learners. And these are English learners who have been enrolled for more than 6 years and are not progressing towards English proficiency. This group represents approximately 32% of our English learners, or 896 students. And so as you can see on the screen, though, 32.5% of the LTELs in our district nearly met or exceeded the standards in English language arts on CASP, which is higher than the state and county average. However, only 9.92% of LTELs in PYLSD nearly met or exceeded the standards in math on the CASP, which is lower than the state and county average. And so we have a series of targeted actions that we are proposing to support our long-term English learners, in addition to all of the actions previously shared for English learners, since they are a part of that group as well. And this includes ensuring systematic progress monitoring and intervention for any long-term English learner with a D or F in the core subject areas, joining the Orange County Department of Education LTEL network to explore strategies to increase parent engagement and close the achievement gap for our LTELs, as well as examining the needs and performance data of our LTELs as a standalone item at each ELAC and DLAC meeting, as well as our Title I, Title III principal meetings. And so at this time, we'd like to invite any feedback you may have on Goal 4, which is brand new, as Mr. Stein shared to us this year. And we will also be receiving new data on our LTELs on the dashboard this coming year. And so more information will come on how we could better measure how we are supporting our LTELs.
I'm just curious, with all of the tutoring that we could provide or that we do provide, how can we target specific, and we're doing interventions, but additional tutoring that even for families that have Spanish speakers or ELs at home that may not be able to help that, how can we benefit that as an after-school program as well?
Yes, absolutely. And so through ELAP, we're being reminded of our expanded learning program is really targeting all of our unduplicated students, but of course our LTELs, and our families are able to provide access that program free of charge. And in that, we are providing tutoring. We're doing Reflex, FRAX, and iReady as well to support our students. And so they're getting targeted help with those deficits. In addition to our LTELs, our ELs, they're all invited to our after-school intervention as well. Principals were very strategic about prioritizing their English learners and inviting them as well.
Do we have any English as a second language classes for adults, for parents?
We do. Both George and Jose are nodding because we are offering it actually in 2 different realms. And so if you want to just briefly speak to each of yours.
That's a partnership through NOCE, and so we have, I believe, at Ruby Drive and Topaz, and hope to next year partner with them again and expand it to Rio Vista. NOCE really works through the college, and they need to ensure that have at least 20 participants, and so getting the 20 participants is what they need, but they're willing, so we're looking to expand that as well.
What's the class? There was an adult parent class at Rio Vista. program? What is that?
That was our parenting class, Disciplina Positiva. We had it all our Title I sites. Very successful, they were asking for more, they're asking for more, and so it was very successful, and that was the one at Rio Vista.
And Dr. Lopez, if you could just share, I know we brought back the Learning Link this year as well.
Sure. So to support the families who are attending our ESL classes, we offer the Learning Link where we have a person in the room to babysit and care for the child. And that's been very helpful because that allows the parent to, have time to get to class, to get to learn English, and at the same time, know that their kid is being very well trained.
Nice.
Just
Thank you.
the obvious question. 3, 4, 5, and 6 all have $0 next to it. I'm assuming. I'm sorry. 4, 5, and 6. Yeah, not 3. Can you expand on that? It's free.
Well, the EL progress monitoring is accounted through our elevation program, which is accounted for in a different goal. Exactly. And so this is a very targeted action that we'll be doing for LTELs, but there's no charge to it because it's on the clock, teacher hours, and yes, and charged elsewhere. And then the LTEL network is free, and ELAC and DLACs are free, and so, yes.
I have a question. I was looking over the data profile that you sent, and in 2020 and 2021, our LTELs, we have pretty much cut that in half those years. We was from currently. What can you talk about what we did right? Have we evaluated those years and what we did? Because I thought that was pretty impressive that we've cut that in half and we've made progress, and so yay. But also I like, is that part of the conversation, what did we do right those years and how did we support, and then are we continuing those?
Or was it an anomaly? Yeah, that's the question.
Yeah.
Sure. I'm going to look to Mr. Cabrera to speak to.
I think what you said earlier prompted me to think of, our LTELs really are because of reclassification. So you see a lot of actions at the elementary because that's our goal. If they reclassify in elementary, then they're reclassified and then we don't have LTELs. And so really our efforts through GLAD is to prioritize and emphasize early reclassification. So by 5th grade, we really want them to reclassify. As far as tutoring goes as well, and why do we have LTELs? We have to really analyze and look, which of the 4 criteria are they needing? So for example, is it the 4? Did they not get a 4 on the LPAC? That's the first kind of step to get reclassified. You need to score 4 on the LPAC. And so analyzing, did that student not make a 4? If they didn't reach a 4, okay, what are we going to do this year to ensure that they're going to get a 4? Is it their grades? Are their grades suffering? So if the teacher's aware, okay, this student, I have to make sure that their grades are appropriate so that they can meet the criteria. And then obviously state testing and all the other measures, we just have to be intentional with our teachers so that they're aware. Going back to knowing your students and knowing, what they need is really going to help us in being that intentional driver as far as looking at each student individually and looking at their needs, but also where are they on that continuum for reclassification. So if it's just the LPAC that they need and everything else is fine, let's focus on LPAC. If it's their grades, I want to ensure that it's their grades. And so that's really what we're doing right now to analyze to see where we can increase the reclassification so we don't have LTELs at the high school and middle school and high school.
And I would just add one more thing. We have been very, very cognizant and deliberate about reclassifying our special education students as well. So we've had a concerted effort, and we've probably more than doubled that in the last couple years, and that may attribute to the change that you're seeing as well.
In the past, we've kind of gotten data on our LTELs that say how many years they've been in our district, and I remember this came up at an LCAP meeting, the data, and so if I could get that, because I couldn't find it in our analysis, and if I missed it, please point me in the right direction. I've read a lot of things lately, but I just would kind of like to see that, because it was concerning a couple years ago that we had students that had been in our district from K to 12 and they were still an LTEL. So I want to make sure we're not missing those students. And I mean, I intentionally look for it. So as Mr. Cabrera said, our teachers are being intentional, and I'm being intentional, making sure that we're not missing anybody. And then I just have one more question on Avid Excel. This is a new program coming to our district. So I'd like if you could share more about it.
Sure. Avid Excel has been in place at both Kramer and Valadez and will continue to be in place at those two schools. Valadez increased the number of sections that they offered in Avid Excel from 2 to 4 this year, but it's not a new program. And it is Avid's version of designated ELD. And so Avid Emerge is the new program that Avid is creating, and that is for grades 9 through 12. And so Paul Laporte actually gave me an email update today that he reached out to Valencia because they had expressed some interest in potentially piloting that course in exchange for our current designated ELD. But again, it is in very preliminary exploratory phases.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. If you don't mind, I'm going to move to goal 5 to support our socioeconomically disadvantaged students then. And so our 5th goal targets this large group of our students. This is 45.3% of our district, or approximately 10,491 students. I'm going to advance the slide here. The achievement, 10,491 students. And so as you can see, we have achievement gaps in English language arts, mathematics, as well as chronic absenteeism and college and career for this group of students. And so we have a series of targeted actions that we will be continuing, as well as these new actions, which are facilitating family literacy and math nights to provide phonics training, reading strategy training, and foundational math and conceptual skills training for families focused on our low-income sites. We're going to be taking part in the Community Engagement Initiative, Cohort 5. We just received that grant and word of it this last week, in which we'll be working with both Melrose and Valadez specifically to increase the engagement and the ability to create achievement at their sites where we haven't been able to in the past. We're going to be creating a Title I parent advisory as well next year to add on to our various parent advisories. And we're going to be training our Title I instructional coaches in Project GLAD Leadership Ensemble, which is different than the Project GLAD that we're providing all teachers so that they could help support and coach teachers at their sites and support those strategies. And also we'll be collaborating with our community health partners to improve the wellness opportunities for both our students and our families at our Title I sites, but namely at Melrose Elementary School. And so at this time, I'd like to open up to feedback and questions on Goal 5.
So I know that we have approximately, our McKinney-Vento students are held within this. And there are approximately 3,300 students that are not only low socioeconomic, but are in a housing crisis, basically. Can you talk to me a little bit about how we can support them additionally on another level? And when I look at the funding for the clinic, it's at 0, and those kind of things. So could you explain where that's going to be coming from and what that clinic will be providing?
Absolutely, and I'm going to let our director in student services, Gina Aguilar, just touch on that briefly.
Are you talking specifically about the Melrose Health Clinics?
And FRC, the FRC.
So we have a health clinic right now at the Family Resource Center. And so we're beginning the exploration of adding another one in the district. So we'll be in exploratory phase for next year, looking into how we can replicate what we have at the FRC at Topaz and putting it at Melrose. So you'll see money assigned to that once we've explored what that looks like and what the community partnerships are in expanding that to Melrose. And as far as the Family Resource Center goes, that as well. So we are looking at what those services provide in that community, and is having one location enough to really service all of our students in our district. As you can see, we have a lot of students that are taking advantage advantage of the services provided at our Family Resource Center. So exploring what that looks like and what the funding looks like to expand that to other areas in our district.
I'm glad we're looking at that because that community down in that neighborhood is, in the past, I don't think it is now, but one of the lowest income neighborhoods in all of Orange County, per capita. And there's not a easy way for them to get to health services, and even going up to Topaz creates a problem if they don't have transportation. So I think this could benefit. I'm looking forward to what that could look like and how that could help the families.
Topaz is only central to certain areas in our district, and like you said, there's
Yeah.
a whole other end of town where it's just not accessible, so we do need to look at expanding that.
This is something we've been talking about for a while, and I would really love to see this as a high priority. The difference between traveling is only 2.5 miles between like Melrose to Topaz, but the families are walking, they're going through 2 different gang areas. It's really not, technically safe. If the students are coming like from Rio Vista, that's almost 4 miles. We've had a lot of interest of having community partners through St. Jude, the county, even the city of Placentia. And I just feel like every time we start talking about this, everyone gets excited and then it just dissolves. So I would really love to see us really reaching out to our partners and
Agreed.
doing something. I mean, I'm glad we have pop-ups, but they really need
You're right.
services. There's nothing there for them. There's not a grocery store. There's no access to medical. I think bringing in our partners, we could really do some amazing things and support these students and improve the health.
Right, and
generally.
I mean, I think because there's been so much success with the program at Topaz, we have a footprint to really look at
Yeah.
replicating, and the partners already in place to do so.
I think it was also mentioned too one time when the city of Placentia was talking with us about this, that we said, how come we don't put it in one of their community parks? Why do they want it on a school? Like, why not on a park that's like open and accessible on the weekend, especially like for the working parents? And so that
Yeah.
was one thing that was brought up to city council.
That's a good
Yeah,
thought. I mean, as long as we.
the city of Placentia, I went to that meeting, and they were like, "We got the Witten Center. It's right there. It's
Yep.
right next to Melrose."
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it has to be on a footprinted in our properties,
Right.
but
But yeah,
but
access it somewhere that's weekend too, because the parents that work,
Yeah.
It'll be open
and
versus
and the plans that I saw for it before, it was kind of out, so it could be accessible during the weekends, and we can go from there. But I just really feel like it's important, to keep this on the priority list. We talk about it. This is the 4th year I think I've talked about it, and we've talked about it as a group, and we all agree on this issue. I mean, there's consensus. We just need to move forward with it.
Agree.
Okay, we have 8 minutes, guys.
Okay,
so
just a
we
second.
gotta power through.
No, this sec. Let's see. Let's see. Let me just look at my notes, because some of these questions have been answered.
If we also only have 8 minutes, I know we've all gone through this extensively, so maybe if we understand what it is, we could just skip ahead towards the questions of like 7 and 8 and 9,
Okay, well,
since we kind of know what.
You can also email us the questions, and we will respond in the interest of time.
okay, well, I think we were promised that we could have, if we couldn't finish, we could have another meeting. And this is the one time the board gets to talk about this, and I think it's good to have community engagement, so I don't think that should be our standard.
Goal 6.
Okay, so goal 6, I'll run through that. This surrounds the academic achievement of our foster youth. And so the student group represents 97 students, or 4% of the district. So 28% of our foster youth met or exceeded standards in ELA and CASP. 14.3% of foster youth met or exceeded standards in math on the CASP, compared to 53.4% of all students. And due to small sample size, graduation rates and college and career indicators were not available on this group. And the chronic absenteeism rate declined by 7.8%, placing this group in orange. And then the suspension rate for foster youth declined by 2.1%. So I'm going to go on to goal 7.
I got questions. On 6,
Can you email us those questions so we can get through this? You've asked almost all the questions, and we only have an hour and a half. So in the interest of time, we'd at least like to address all our goals.
I've got quite a bit of questions coming up too in the other one. So is it possible to do another half an hour or an hour before the next meeting?
Well, the board would have to vote on a new meeting, and so we're not there yet. But for the interest of time, I'd like staff to be able to review all the goals.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll review 7. This is to look at the areas of growth through a series of targeted actions, which includes some of these actions. So providing math intervention teachers at each middle school to close the achievement gap, providing a multi-tiered system of support to enrich academic achievement, provide a robust data dashboard and analysis system to identify, monitor, and provide interventions for our students that are at risk, convene collaborative task forces to address the curricular instruction null and emergent student need, implement a robust attendance tracking system, direct support to oversee our student attendance review team meetings and district attendance review team meetings, maintain robust and relevant career technical education pathways, and then increase parent engagement efforts by hosting workshops and trainings, and then expanding and supporting our dual language academy to promote bilingualism by literacy. And then 8, so I can go over that with you really quickly, is our surrounding our lowest performing student groups and sites that were not addressed in previous goals. And so it's in these areas: academic performance in ELA and math, English language progress indicator, college and career, chronic absenteeism, and then suspensions. And so I'll go over just a few of these. In number 8, it's to systematically monitor and attendance chronically absent students and work collaboratively with school sites. Re-implement the Saturday school program across the district, ensure that each student with a disability has a well-developed IEP addressing their unique needs and accommodations in attendance, involving families and community resources in the development of the implementation of these strategies. Offer ongoing professional development for staff to enhance their understanding of disabilities, and then ensure high school counselors monitor college and career indicators for each student group so that all students are prepared for college and career. Okay, and then number 9, the last one, thanks for bearing with us. So the final one surrounds staffing at El Camino Real High School. And it's as is required due to the receipt of equity multiplier funds. So you'll see here that there was a decline in student performance in ELA, with 16% of students meeting or exceeding standards, earning the school a red performance level. There was also a decline in student performance in math, with a 1.96 of students meeting or exceeding standards. There was a decline in their English learners making progress toward proficiency, with a 36.9% demonstrating so. Graduation rates for their students maintained, with 73.8% graduating. Chronic absenteeism wasn't available because that is for students in K through 8 on that indicator. And then suspension rates for El Camino students increased by 2.5%, with 6.5% of students suspended at least one day. And then lastly, students at El Camino were prepared for college and career, earning the school a rating of very low as compared to high for all students in the district. Okay, so that is number 9 completed. And is there any more feedback?
I'd like more time, just so that we could look at it. And if we're coming back in June to approve all of this, some time to be able to do that between now and then, and even if it's the study session, and a little more time in June leading up to this, so that we're comfortable with having all of our questions answered. Yes, with the adjustments and date and amounts. Like, there are some in here I have more questions on that have a $0 amount.
Mm-hmm.
When in June, all of those,
Yeah.
what it will really look like.
yeah, because Saturday school has $0 to it. And I have a lot of great ideas for increasing, high school dual language academy that I would like to do, and parent engagement, and marketing for our unduplicated students, that I would like to share and discuss, and let's collaborate and build on. So,
Okay. So it's 4:30, and so we're going to end the study. I'm sorry, 5:30. It is 5:30. I know you guys wish it was 4:30. So we're going to end our study session at 5:30, and we're going to adjourn into closed session for the purpose of discussing the following matter. 4.1, existing litigation. Children's Health Defense California Chapter, California 501c3, nonprofit corporation on its own and behalf of its members, Chris Palicki, an individual on behalf of himself and as guardian ad lim for his minor child plaintiffs versus Placentia Yorba Linda Unified School District, a local educational agency in the County of Orange, Yorba Linda High School, a public school within the Placentia Yorba Linda Unified School District, Jim Elsasser in his official capacity as superintendent of Placentia Yorba Linda Unified School District, Richard McAlinden in his official capacity as assistant superintendent of Placentia Yorba Linda Unified School District, Linda Adamson in her official capacity as assistant superintendent of Placentia Yorba Linda Unified School District, Richard Din is in his official capacity as principal of Yorba Linda High School, Bird Potter in her official capacity as assistant principal of Yorba Linda High School, Carrie Buck, Karen Freeman, and Marilyn Anderson, each individual in her official capacity as a member of the school board of the Placentia Yorba Linda School District, Dana Gigliotti, an individual, Brian Bloom, an individual, Jacqueline Chavez, an individual, John Doman, an individual, Madison Waltmeyer, an individual, Amber Ferris, an individual, and does 1 through 50 inclusive of the defendant. Is there anyone present in our audience who would like to address any of these items that we are about to adjourn to closed session for? Okay, well, I felt like I read, sorry. There's one item I felt like I read about 10. Anyone have a comment? All right, with that, we are going to adjourn to closed session at 5:32 p.m. and we'll return at 6 p.m.